meeting to order of the Leominster School Committee for Tuesday, July 30th. If everyone can please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance of the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. At this time, I'm going to read our Leominster School Committee statement. The committee represents the needs of all Leominster public school students and places their interests above all others. We will exercise a leadership, adhere to our protocols, and base our decision upon a reasoned assessment of all available information. We will advocate for each of our schools and support quality public education in Leominster. At this time, we're going to open up our public forum. If you can please unmute yourself, state your name and address for the record. We appreciate it.
Hi, Bonnie Budd.
Hi, Bonnie, go ahead.
Prospect Street. Hi, thank you. I want to thank you all for the opportunity to address you and the committee tonight. I wanted to speak in regards to the 3 reopening plans that you're considering. I have many questions and concerns over the safety, development, equitable implementation, and monitoring of whatever plan is chosen, but I have highlighted just a few to share with you. Have we thought about the subgroup of students who cannot successfully learn in the hybrid or full remote option, where virtual learning does not match their learning style? I envision that group to consist of ELL students, students on IEPs, not just sub-separate, but also our 20+% of students on IEPs and 504 plans who have accommodations to access their education and need more one-to-one support. Those students who cannot learn or thrive in that remote setting. Also, what about the families who cannot shoulder a week on and week off experience, be it due to employment or the fact that the constant change will unnecessarily cause trauma, anxiety, and disruption to the student? Have we explored alternate spaces for those students during the not in the classroom week, be it a pod or a combination of outdoor and indoor settings when weather allows, a setting where you could have paras and tutors supervising those students to support them when they get stuck trying to access that education on their Chromebooks and iPads? Also, I suggest we look at the chosen model once you vote on it in terms of quarters. And, I ask if after those quarters, are students going to be able to change their status if that model's not working for them? What about checks and balances? Will this fall to the school committee where the superintendent, the principals, and administration will meet regularly to look at the success or modification of these plans? And lastly, I want to wish our 150th graduating class of 2020 a wonderful and successful graduation on Saturday. Hats off to future successes and persevering during these unique times. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anybody else like to address the committee?
Hello.
Hi, please come state your name and address for the record, please. Did someone wish to address the committee during open forum?
I do.
Okay, please state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Larry Zawaro, and I live at 8 Brentwood Drive in Leominster, Mass. And I also would like to thank the committee for giving me a couple minutes to speak tonight. I'm very happy to hear the good news today that the state is going to be giving $1.7 million in addition to Chapter 70 funds. That is very good news for our students and our staff. Just some concerns I still have, though, is the cooperation or lack thereof between the city and the school department. Everybody needs to get in a room, and we have to start working together much more than we are doing right now. It is a stain on our city and our school system. We also need to start repairing relationships with teachers right now. If I was a teacher in Leominster, there would be a lot of hurt feelings on my end right now that the school department and the city have kind of just been playing a game or whatever. I just know that there should be some relationship repairing between the school department and the teachers. And no matter what plan you go with, somebody's not going to be happy. I'm just going to ask you, before you vote on a plan tonight, can you guarantee the safety of all of the students and staff in our schools? If there's even a slight hesitation, you shouldn't open. And that is, that's just my opinion. And if you're going to be calling teachers back, which I believe you will be, when you call them back, this was an issue in 2017, please make sure do not use the phrase reasonably assured. That is a very, that would make me very nervous as a teacher if I got a letter saying reasonably assured. Just use the word assured. Congratulations to the graduating class, and thank you so much, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address the committee?
I would.
Go ahead. State your name and address for the record, please.
Lonnie Perry from Rutland, Massachusetts, a Skyview Middle School teacher.
Go ahead.
As a parent and a teacher, I have some serious concerns regarding returning to our building in person and also hybrid learning in general. This is because as a parent, I have one vantage point, but I also see things from an educator's perspective. Therefore, I was wondering if Leominster parents actually knew that before restaurants could open their doors for indoor dining, which is only about an hour of sitting inside, they need to ensure that a ventilation system is appropriate and properly increases the circulation of outdoor air as much as possible. For example, they need to open the windows, they need to open the doors and prioritize outdoor seating. But yet in Leominster schools, the plan is to be inside for the length of the school day rather than just an hour, with serious issues regarding our air circulation. Now, we've had just 2 of our many school buildings tested for air quality, and we have found some serious issues in both of them. But yet the reports have not been released to the public. And why is that? In most classrooms, the windows only open a few inches, and they're not allowed to have fans this year because it's the same thing like if you went to get your hair blown out at the hairdresser. They can't do that anymore. There's a problem with the air circulation inside, so you can't use those. So we can't use fans, we can't use air conditioners in the classroom this year. And the fact is that the temperatures in those classrooms reach between 90 to 100 degrees at times. I have literally had crayons melt in my classroom. So this is a serious safety hazard for teachers and students who have to wear masks all day with limited breaks.
They gave me a PIN number.
Oh, okay.
Put the PIN number in.
Can they hear us?
But with this limited ability to ventilate our classrooms and concerns regarding our air quality even before COVID, parents need to be aware that their children are breathing recycled air in close proximity to others and their peers.
2 minutes is up. 2 minutes is up.
Thank you very much. Is anybody else able and willing to address the committee at this time?
I do.
Go ahead. State your name and address for the record, please.
Denise Hazuri, Harvard, Massachusetts, and I'm a Skyview Middle School teacher as well. Lastly, do parents and staff, for that matter, know why a hybrid model of a week on and a week off was selected as opposed to what most districts have opted for, a model that meets with both groups during the week? For example, one group would attend 2 days, deep cleaning, and then the next 2 days, the other group. With 1 week on and 1 week off, we would spend 9 days without seeing children in person, and no matter what we do for remote, that really breaks up the education and the learning continuity. So that is another point that I wanted to bring up. It would kind of feel every week like the Monday after our winter, February, and April breaks, and that would happen all like during the length of the hybrid. And if you're a teacher or maybe even a parent, you know how difficult that is after those week-long breaks. There are hundreds of educators who want to have a say in creating a safe learning environment for their students and even their own children who attend here. So we just want to make sure that we all do that in a safe manner for students, students' families, teachers, and teachers' families. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address the committee? Please unmute yourself and state your name and address. Again, would anybody else like to address the committee at this time?
No, you're doing it. No matter what you do, keep going.
Okay, one and final time before we close this portion of our meeting. Would anybody else like to address the committee? Please unmute yourself and state your name and address, please. All right, having no one come forward, we're going to close the open forum portion of our meeting, and we're going to move on to communications. Could somebody please mute yourself? We're having some feedback. Thank you. Superintendent, communications?
There are no communications this evening.
Thank you. We'll move right into the superintendent report.
So we actually have two celebrations tonight. Actually, it's multiple celebrations. We want to congratulate Mrs. Patty King. She was the assistant principal over at Johnny Appleseed, and through an interview process, she is going to be named the next principal. Her predecessor, Dr. O'Hearn Curran, is retiring at the end of August, and Patty has been her assistant for many years. They've had a working relationship within our district and another district, and she is a perfect fit for Johnny Appleseed School. And so we welcome her to the administrative team, to the principal administrative team, and know that she's going to be a wonderful addition to us. So congratulations and welcome, Mrs. Patty King. So that's good news for us. We're moving in the right direction. And also, just a reminder, graduation is happening Saturday morning at 9 o'clock. The field looks amazing, amazing. We are doing something completely different, but we are in person, and families will be a part of this. There is a practice that we need families to attend tomorrow evening at 6, but the gate opens up at 5, and on Saturday, the graduation starts at 9, but the gate opens at 8. So if we can all be there as well. And I want to thank the chair, Eileen Griffin, and Dr. Dubzinski, and Dan Bayshant for signing over 430 diplomas. We got it done, and every student will be receiving that, as well as there was a ton of staff down at Doyle Field today. They want to make sure that this is a special event for our seniors. Those who have missed out on so much, we're going to make Saturday quite a celebration for all of them. So I hope everyone will attend, because it will be quite an event. So we're ready to go. So thank you.
Thank you, Paula. That's wonderful. Congratulations to the class of 2020. And certainly it has been an unprecedented time in our history. And we appreciate, all that you have gone through. And this is quite an accomplishment. You should all be very, very proud of yourselves. And we certainly are looking forward to the graduation. It's always, a wonderful event, and this year I think it'll be extra special, given everything that the community and certainly the graduating seniors have gone through. So congratulations to everyone.
And the weather looks perfect.
Right. So please, the mother and me, make sure you put sunscreen on and bring some water.
Yes.
Because if it's hot, you're going to need both.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Having no more information for the superintendent's report, why don't we move on to our main event and talk about the reopening plans?
Okay, let me just do a quick overview. I know that we have, the plan's been out there for over a week. I videotaped the presentation. It's been playing over and over for about 72 hours. So most people know the content, but I'd just like to run down, if you don't mind, just sort of the highlights of each one of the pieces. And I just want to say, this is such a difficult decision. And nothing we do is going to make everybody happy. I understand that. The best, for me, I will always believe in the power of a teacher and in-person learning, but I understand that we're living through a pandemic right now. So
I think before you begin, Superintendent, I just wanted to also add that you're going to present the overview of these three plans. Everyone needs to understand that things are subject to change depending on what is going on, decisions made by DESE, our governor, our president. And once we decide on a plan, then we're really going to drill down and, sort of answer maybe a lot of other people's questions. Right. But we can't do some of the detailed work until we know which plan we're going with.
Exactly. Exactly. School, the start of school has been moved out, which is giving us some more time, which I feel a little more comfortable with. The first day of school now will be September 14th, kindergarten September 16th, and teachers have been given 10 days of upfront training. We will be training teachers on technology, safety, virtual management systems, as well as social emotional work. Somebody has an echo out there. I don't know if anybody else can hear it. Okay. So first off, our remote plan. I can't say it strongly enough. We will always have a remote learning plan. The Leominster Learning Academy, regardless, we're having a remote plan, whether we choose that as our full plan or as a partial plan. So families that do not feel comfortable, we are going to support them. The students will have a Leominster teacher, a Leominster live teacher. It's not a virtual teacher. And the student will be attached to their school. So if it's a Northwest student, that family and that student will still receive all the notices, all the communications, all the addendums for Northwest school. So we will be able to track them down that way. Parents and students will receive technical support as well as our teachers through websites, YouTube videos, job aids, whatever they need. They did not have that back in March. We do have those features now. And so unlike March, the remote piece will be scheduled, daily attendance will be taken, true grading will happen, assessments, interventions, students will have access to all the fine arts. We still have gym and art and music and media. All of those pieces, if you are remote, you still have access. We also have lessons, oftentimes at the different levels, taught through our guidance staff on social emotional learning. Those also will be available for any student remotely, as well as principal meetings or possible shows or whatever happens in the school. You hear a lot about, the big words right now are synchronous and asynchronous. Synchronous means it's happening at the same time. Some of the levels, especially the elementary, they may choose every morning with the students in front of them and the students that are at home to do a morning meeting or have a read aloud. So we're going to have synchronous activities where all students come together every day. We also are going to have asynchronous. So maybe you want to pull in an art lesson virtually, or you want to pull in a health lesson virtually. You have the ability and the flexibility because we're going to record those ahead of time and create libraries for students and for teachers. But regardless of what plan we choose, remote will always be an option, always be an option. The hybrid model is, the one that we did finally select was the AB, or what we're calling the blue and white weeks. And the reason we went with that plan versus the 2 days in, the 3 days out, all of that, was through our forums, many parents said, whatever you do, can you bring us some continuity and some consistency? So with 5 full days in school, a teacher's roster may have 30 students, and we factored in all students in the city. So we were an average of 30 students on a class roster. 15 from Monday through Friday would be with you. There's a lot you can do with children in 5 full days with a very small class. We set up classrooms to be 6 feet apart. We played around with the 3 feet, seat to seat. We were not comfortable with it. We have been following guidance and going beyond, truly. Our signage is overdone. Our sanitation stations are overdone. Our pushing seats away. Safety has really been in the forefront for all of this. We will be recording daily health statistics through a parent and staff app, which all information goes directly to our nurses' stations so that we can keep track of what's happening on the health metrics. And we will be assessing students the very first day, trying to see where they're at. We want to take students where they're at and push them forward, where their needs are and what we can do to meet them and provide a very comprehensive program for all of our students. On their off weeks, we really need our staff to help us. These are the weeks where students can access interventions, they can be working on research, they can be doing book reports, a lot more self-directed, but we will have a Leominster teacher in contact with those students. So they won't be out there on their own, and if they have questions or they get stuck, they need somebody to help them, and we recognize that. There will also, in the hybrid model, be synchronous and asynchronous opportunities, and daily attendance will be a major factor. The full return. So when we did our feasibility study, we really struggled with this one. We had to, in order to bring in over 6,100 students, we had to access all of our, what they call recaptured spaces. We would need to utilize all our cafeterias, our gymnasiums, auditoriums. We would need to increase our teaching staff by about 20% and expenses as well. It would be very difficult to adhere to the guidance and spread everybody out as far as we can with a full return. So whatever decision we make tonight, it has to be fluid. Initially, we were thinking whatever we select, we should hold on to for perhaps a quarter, the first quarter of school. It's 10 weeks. We can collect a lot of data, see what's happening in our region. We've been following the science all along, and we can make adjustments. We can pivot at any point in time. We take all guidance under consideration. So regardless of what we choose, the Leominster staff is going to be ready. We have enough staff at this point for our remote, and now with there is a tentative agreement between the governor, the House, and the Senate for a level funded budget with perhaps a little more, maybe the inflation rate, which would help us fulfill our needs mostly in the hybrid. But we will make sure that we get the job done because students really need us. And if we have to, we will make adjustments. So I am open for questions. I have all my administrative team on the line. So we will try to answer as many as we can, but I have to say there are a few items that are a work in progress and some issues that we have to talk out.
So before I call on anybody, Mike, I'm going to ask you to sort of explain what a level funding budget means to us, because level funded sounds great, but in actuality, it's still a cut. So if you can, I don't know if you want to go first, but I would like, as the chair of the Finance Committee, to explain to the public what that means, if you don't mind.
I will do my best, although it's a thing that's very much in flux. So first, I should say, Finance Committee has not had a chance to meet to review any of this, and of course, it's still just a tentative agreement, so we don't know for sure what numbers there are. What I've heard talked about is taking last year's amount and adding the inflation rate to it, which means none of the Student Opportunity Act increases in rates would happen, just last year plus inflation. If that happens, that's an improvement over what the cut that we got in the city budget passed in June, but certainly doesn't allow us to do extra stuff, and doesn't, I think it would be better than what we have now, but I can't really give numbers because they haven't been confirmed yet.
Sure, but it would mean that we would still hope to recoup some financial support, hopefully from the city, or particularly if we go back at full, we would have to, in order to support all the needs of the students, we would need more teachers.
Yes, the appropriation for this general fund in the city budget that the city council passed uses last year's number from the state as the state number. So any increase in the state amount should be passed directly through as an increase in our general fund. That is still up to the mayor to propose and the city council to approve, but that's what should happen. An increase in state funding should go into our general fund by exactly that amount. It looks like the mayor has a comment on that.
Yes, please, if I'm allowed. If you remember, my budget, and I've explained this countless times, and I'll explain it one more time. The budget was a carryover budget. Superintendent's budget was based on the January 19th budget by the governor before COVID. So in place and communicated to the school committee, the city council, the press, as well as all city departments. The budget I submitted was a carryover budget, similar to what the state did. They did a 3-month carryover. We did a carryover, not knowing what the budget numbers are going to be. We still don't know exactly what they're going to be, but we have a better idea. So, Mike, I take that. I just want to make sure that's corrected, that there were no cuts in the budget. The budget was a carryover budget because we didn't know what the budget numbers are going to be. We have a much better idea of that now. Now, if you remember last year, at the around October, November, the state appropriated X amount of dollars in addition to the budget that was already, if you remember, and you go back into our minutes, you will see that the budget that we passed, that I submitted and the city council submitted, you'll see in the notes that it was well stated that that was sufficient to run the school department. That was above and beyond what was requested because the governor and the state legislature had submitted additional funds. We, in turn, submitted even more additional funds to make sure that we were over our net school spend. So very communities, I've looked at all of the communities getting assistance from the state. We are getting $1.7 million more. And that's, you can say that's adjusted for inflation, but many communities haven't been adjusted for inflation. We got $1.7 million plus $1.2 million in the CARES Act, and then $225 per student, which comes out to about $1.3 million, all to buy personal protection equipment, hand sanitizer, to help us with transportation and all of those things. So tonight, I think it's time that we start talking about hiring teachers back, or at least letting them know that there's a good chance that we will be hiring teachers back, because the number used, remember, no other school system in the state used a 10 to 20% reduction, $13 million in reduction in personnel. And I think we owe, one of the callers said we owe some respect due to the teachers. And I think that, we laid them off. And I want to make note that insurance changes August 1st. So employees that were laid off still have their insurance until August 1st. And then they have to switch to either paying under COBRA, either pay our insurance plan or get another insurance plan. So I think it's important that we start to notify teachers who might be looking in other districts that it's a very good chance, where it was before, we're anticipating 10 or 20% reductions, that there's a good chance that we'll be hiring back the staff. And I think we need to do that as a school committee in a communication to the superintendent, that everything looks good. It looks like a $1.7 million increase, and that is a very good thing for our school system. When we were talking, we were notified, and we laid off $13 million worth of personnel in the Leominster Public School System, something no other school system did. So $1.7 million increase and a $1.1 million increase from the city at minimum is a very good thing. And I don't want to minimize the good work that the legislature did, because they're facing $6 billion worth of cuts in taxes and revenues, and still managed to give us not only what they gave us last year, but $1.7 million in addition. I want to thank them. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Mike, did you have any questions for Paula or comments on the plan?
So it seems clear to me that even with the additional money, that the extra cost required of the all-in person is, to me, particularly the transportation part of that, I'm not sure that's manageable. To transport all students to school every day with the 1/3 capacity on the buses, I think that's going to double our transportation bill. And Dean, you're not prepared to double our transportation appropriation, I don't imagine.
There is, if you, on a conference call with the secretary the other day of education, said that there are funds available that we are, I don't know if we've applied for them yet, the school department has, to make up for that extra cost of transportation. But I would like to make a motion right now that we support the hybrid system right now, because that's the best of the three systems that we have. And I know we can have other discussion. I also would like to make part of that motion that we begin to sit down, now that we know that there's an increase in the budget, that we sit down and start to thoroughly go through the budget and prioritize the budget so that we get the resources and the supplies that teachers need in the classroom. I've said this before. My highest priority is when the students get to school, they get to school safely, they get in front of a teacher, and everything else after that is less of a priority for me. And that'll be my motion.
Right. So, Dean, at this point, I'm going to ask that you hold off on your motion, because I think it's very important to give everybody on the committee a chance to express their feelings, and when you and we can go back to your motion. But I want to, give everybody an opportunity to weigh in, and so far, just you and Mike have started to weigh in, and I see lots of people with their hands up.
Motion and somebody seconds it. That is the time to have debate and conversation and ask questions, and then you go to a final vote.
So we certainly can do it either way, Dean. Right. And so far right now, I don't have a second, for that motion. Does anybody wish to second the motion at this time? I see Melissa asking to second.
I actually would like to make a motion for further discussion before we can move to a vote.
All right, we will definitely have discussion before we vote, even if there's a first and second of the motion. So, Sue, are you seconding the motion in?
I did.
That we go to the hybrid model?
Yes.
All right, so we have a first and a second. We will go for discussion at this point. Mike, I want to give you the opportunity to finish speaking, and then we'll go to Melissa next.
So a week ago, I was prepared to support the hybrid model, but
You're breaking up a little bit.
In particular, I think the language. Sorry, can you hear me better now? Am I still?
Yes.
Okay. Over the weekend, the new cases per day started going up. The percent positivity rate, which I think is even more important, went above 1.9% for the first time in weeks. Today it was announced that yesterday's positivity rate was over 2%. We're at right about the right time to start seeing an effect of the phase 2 reopening. So it's still early. It's not quite a whole week. This could be a blip, but I am concerned that this is the beginning of a resurgence. I find it kind of hard to vote to send people into the classroom when we're still meeting remotely. I kind of feel like we should almost have to meet in person to tell other people to meet in person. So,
just to comment on that, Mike, I have requested that our next meeting be in person, and I had talked to, I know I had called you and we didn't connect, but I have requested for us to meet in person the next meeting.
Good. So, I absolutely agree that academically the best place for our students is in the classroom. Teach myself, I'd rather be in the classroom with my students. At Fitchburg State, they're going to expect me to be in my classroom with my students half the time at the moment. But I'm worried that we're seeing a resurgence, and so this may be premature. I'm also cognizant of the science that is now telling us that it's probably safe to send elementary school and kindergarten kids back in because they get so much less and transmit it so much less, but that high school students transmit the virus just like adults. But of course, treating different grades differently is not on the table in front of us. So I'm not sure. I'm definitely willing to listen to what other people on the committee say, but at the moment I'm leaning towards a preference for starting remote and then looking at ways to continuing the conversation with their teachers about how to get some kids back in the classroom. I think with that, I'll let somebody else speak. I've taken a lot of time.
Sure. Melissa?
Hi. So
I have been back and forth on almost an hourly basis on my own concerns and thoughts, and I tend to lean toward the hybrid model because I feel like that gives families the most choices about what's best for their individual child, not just even their family, but from one child to the next, what's the best option for them. But I do have real concerns about sending staff full-time into the classrooms with concerns that have been brought up tonight about the air quality and the air conditioning. So I have questions. I'll try to be more specific about them. There's questions about if we have enough custodial staff to be able to go through each of the classrooms after the school. And also what the hallways and bathroom monitor situations will look like, since the bathrooms are small and are going to be limited to how many kids can be going into the bathrooms at each time, and who's going to oversee that. So I don't know if we want to have a back and forth discussion, but I have quite a few questions. Maybe?
I'm fine, Eileen, if you want me to start answering.
Sure, go ahead.
Sure. In the hybrid, we've worked with the facilities director, and we feel comfortable at this time with our custodial staff. They have been taking care of our buildings the last 5 months, staying on top of things, working very well with us. They understand the importance and the urgency around keeping our buildings clean, and we've had several meetings with our custodial staff the last few months. Around bathrooms and hallways, we are going to have people monitoring the movement, because we want to keep movement somewhat limited, but we need to keep airflow with windows and doors sort of open. We're looking at hiring back a few, perhaps some aides to help us for movement and checking in. So all of those are under consideration right now as well.
Okay. During the off week, shouldn't be called an off week, during the remote week in a hybrid plan, would kids have a separate teacher that they're checking in with about questions and assignments, or would it still be the same lead teacher that they would have?
So that is a work in progress. That's something we're working with the union on right now, but I can tell you that it will be a teacher.
Okay.
And it would be a consistent teacher, so that Johnny,
right,
on every remote week, will have the same teacher
correct,
remotely if it's not his in-person teacher.
Correct.
And then just hearing from parents, so I will say my gut is to go on hybrid with this. It gives the most options. I think it also, many parents who are working have asked about the Creative Choices program. Mm-hmm. And I feel more comfortable that that consistent program may be available to kids and families that need it and are working in the community. Where if we go fully remote, I would have a hard time okaying Creative Choices and saying, yeah, you can come in if you pay, and we'll watch your child, but not for everyday learning.
Yes.
So there is that piece of it.
So we will have Creative Choices in the hybrid. We can manage the numbers before and after school. This past summer, Renee, I'm going to speak for you. This past summer, we ran sort of a hybrid model. Creative Choices has been up and running at Francis Strait. All the signage has sort of been our model that we've watched and seen how everything's moved, and it's working very well, and parents have been great. Mm-hmm. I have to say, students are wonderful. They love their masks. It's a fashion statement. They're having a blast with it, but they're very respectful. So kids are very resilient. And on the opposite side, we just finished an ELL, fully remote summer school that was run so well with structure and expectations and celebrations. So we've had the two models going simultaneously, and we've had on both sides positive outcomes. So if we went to the hybrid, knowing that we still have a remote option for parents, for those that aren't comfortable right now, and they can come back, different times, I feel that we can balance it.
My thought process is, and I'm concerned about numbers in the area and in the state as they increase as well, is that I feel like we have more flexibility right now, that if we choose a hybrid option to shut back down if we need to, where if tonight we vote to go completely remote, it's that much harder to open, and we may miss an opportunity to open as well.
Okay.
That's it for the evening.
Thank you, Melissa. Ron will be next, and I'll get to you after that, Isabel. I'll make sure everyone has an opportunity to speak. Go ahead, Ron.
I'm not in favor of the hybrid. To voice Michael's concern and also Melissa's concern, is that there is a peak that's starting to show up again. And I think we need to start off with the virtual learning. And if the peak doesn't start going up, starts going down, then we can start talking about having the hybrid. But having the hybrid or having the virtual is one thing that's missing. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. We need to have a number. How many people, how many kids, how many parents, how many teachers have to get sick before we decide to shut everything down? If we get some kids or some parents or relatives of the parents, if they get sick, they're not going to be interested in school. And if they get sick, it's the coloration after, because the literature's out there. Every day you hear about when people are recuperating, they're not interested in school. We have to address that also. So you want to talk about a hybrid? Fine, let's talk about a hybrid. But I want numbers. How many people have to get sick before we shut it down? We have to have something to be able to drop back to. And right now it's all very nice talking pretty about theory, but I want numbers. How many people have to get sick? And if they get sick, who's going to pay for their hospitalization? Who's going to pay for their funeral costs? I'm dead serious.
But that's not the school's responsibility, Ron. You would not be able to.
It's not the school's responsibility, but they're out there. They're saying that.
And you would not know where people necessarily came in contact or got sick from.
It doesn't matter.
That would be very difficult.
Fear is a
big
determining factor. And right now I'm not comfortable with the hybrid model. I think we should start off with the virtual learning and then slowly move up to that. Move up to the hybrid.
Right. So, Ron, I was just going to add that
Go ahead.
We may have nobody get sick in Leominster, but we still might have to shut down depending on what happens with the state and what the directives are from the state.
Just remember, there was a school, I forget where, it was on TV this morning and last night. There was a school or a hospital. They didn't count their numbers right. And all of a sudden I realized they made a mistake. They had to go back and recount the numbers. And I'm here to tell you, that makes me fearful, because that means that there might be other places where they're not counting the numbers right. We have to be careful on who's doing the counting. Do they have an agenda?
Sure, but what I'm saying is that we may be having to change our plan from directives from the state that have not necessarily anything to do with our school system in general. We might have to just follow, straight state directives from the governor or DESE.
Well, I'm just asking. All I'm asking for some numbers. I mean, talk with somebody. Get some numbers out there. How many people have to get sick? If it's not in Leominster, what are the districts? What's going to be the number that caused everything to tip over? Like Mike said, there's that cluster starting to show up. We cannot afford to be psychologically stooped because of the task at hand.
All right. Thank you, Ron. Isabel?
Yes, thank you. So I just want to kind of echo Ron and Michael's sentiments thus far. I'm really disappointed in Governor Baker, Commissioner Riley, Secretary Pizer, and the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education because this school committee and our superintendent should not be making these serious decisions regarding public health. DESE should be making these public health decisions with the best public health professionals in the state to make sure that our public schools all across the Commonwealth are safe, and not encouraging schools to pass a plan for in-person learning because their biggest concerns are regression and standardized test scores. So we should not be putting the burden of getting our economy up and running on the backs of teachers, staff, and school districts. This is an incredibly hard decision. I toured Creative Choices. They seem to be doing pretty well, but I don't want to say that desks at 6 feet apart, no hugging, no touching, no playing together is what our students need to be educated and happy. And it's just continually adding work to everyone involved. The full in-person instruction model is unattainable and unsafe, as the superintendent mentioned. I think the hybrid model is a good idea in theory, but in practice, it's unsustainable. So I am in full support of a remote learning model. I do not want a high school student's sickness or death or a teacher's sickness or death on the hands of any of us on this committee if that were to, God forbid, happen. We as a committee are still meeting remotely. The legislature is still meeting remotely. So it is hypocritical of us to ask them to return. And I know, Eileen, we spoke about going to an in-person meeting next time, but we are making the decision tonight, this time, at a remote meeting. I just think that everyone needs to be actively engaged going forward, parents, stakeholders, educators, because communication is integral for this school year. Cases are rising, as Michael has mentioned, as we continue to reopen in the state, and that is very concerning. And personally, I am not a public health professional, I am not a scientist, but I can't imagine us opening our doors on September 4th. I believe we will be in a second surge. So personally, I don't think that our efforts need to be going through a hybrid model and what that looks like if we cannot open our doors anyway. We need to make sure our staff and our students and our families are prepared for a remote learning model. And I am open to going through it and reassessing come when the quarter is finished. I'm also happy to looking at it when flu season is finished and seeing how that works out. But I think the full remote model is the safest model to choose right now. I am with Ron. I am not comfortable sending that many people back into a building, even if it's at the hybrid level. And I want to make sure that Leominster Public Schools provides the safest and best educational experience for our students. And that would have to be the remote learning model, in my opinion. So I will not be supporting Dean's motion. And I also want to add that if we were to do a hybrid model, that he is fully prepared to fund transportation at its full capacity, because we need to make sure that all of our students can get to school if it were to pass tonight. I also want to add that Gardner Public Schools and Worcester Public Schools, both local public school systems in our area, are choosing to go remote only. Gardner will be reassessing when the quarter is over, but I think that's really important to look at what other community schools are doing. I know they're not Leominster, we may not have cases in Leominster, but I think it's really important to try to be as consistent as possible throughout the Commonwealth. So I am going to urge that we support a full remote learning model. At least that is what I will be supporting tonight.
Thank you, Isabel. Peter, and then Brandon.
Thank you. I have a little bit of a prepared statement here, so if you can excuse me while I read it. So I'm not going to support a plan that sends large numbers of students back into the school buildings, and I'm inclined to vote for a remote learning option. However, I am open to some in-person support for high-need students and CTE students when instruction cannot reasonably be replicated. This pandemic is not yet over, and national trends seem to point towards an increase in cases in the coming months. If we were to open the schools under an in-person model, There's a strong possibility that the schools will once again be closed due to COVID-19. I would rather that we focus on doing the best that we can with remote learning than to divide our focus and energy on one of the in-person models while preparing for transitioning to remote learning once again. It is not in the best interest of our students, their families, or LPS staff to have them continually juggle ever-changing circumstances. Like anyone else, I do not believe that remote learning is an adequate substitute for in-person learning. But if we are likely to return later this year, then we should do it well and prepare for it now. In addition to my desire to see us do well with remote learning and provide a modicum of predictability for all of those involved, I do not believe it is safe for our students to return to school buildings at this time. Fortunately, children seem to suffer minor symptoms and have not been a significant population of those that have been reported as having COVID-19. However, we do not know with certainty how easily children catch and transmit the virus. The studies that have been put out are often preliminary and have small sample sizes, and many of them focus on countries that have done a much better job than the United States in containing the virus. Currently, as this country has been reopening, we've been seeing more young children contracting and even dying from the disease. So these conversations are, at essence, a utilitarian equation of how many children are willing to see become sick and die so that the majority may receive a better education so that so that their families can go back to work and reopen the economy. I do not mean to be political or inflammatory by those remarks, but while none of us want to see children suffer, we do have to acknowledge that we don't live in a black and white world, and that's really the discussion that we're having right now. By reopening the school buildings, we are putting the LPS staff at risk, and we are putting the families of students and staff at risk. It's not just the children that could possibly get sick. One of the major challenges with this virus is that individuals can be asymptomatic and still be actively transmitting the virus. Children in particular are prone to be asymptomatic, and it's not unreasonable to foresee a scenario in which one asymptomatic student is able to create a small outbreak should they be in close proximity to other students and LPS staff. I toured the summer program for Creative Choices and saw the procedures that they were taking to limit exposure between cohorts of children, which is essential to preventing a larger outbreak. At the time, they had 57 students enrolled and 44 actively attending. I was impressed by how they had adapted and was satisfied with their attempts for keeping students safe. However, as I was touring it, for me, it became clear that the procedures worked well because of the relatively small amount of students they were dealing with. In my opinion, many of the procedures start to lose their effectiveness and practicality once you begin to scale them up even to a hybrid model level of students. Things like pickup and drop off, checking students at the door, breakfast and lunch, and even the use of restrooms are challenges that I think we can do well, but I'm not convinced we can do well enough due to the nature of some of these activities, not a lack of innovation. On the local level, Leominster has additional challenges to reopening the school buildings. Budget constraints will likely lead to a reduction in staff when we would need to bring on additional staff in order to reopen the school building safely. I have real concerns about student-to-teacher ratios under an in-person model, whether it's hybrid or full-time. And we would be lacking custodians, nurses, and other support staff that have a tremendous role to play in maintaining safe procedures during the COVID-19 pandemic. There may yet be some federal relief, but it seems likely that the state will level fund Chapter 70. And by level fund, I'm including the inflation increase because not including that inflation increase is an effective cut. But what that means is that we're beholden to the city budget that was passed earlier this year, and these are still preliminary numbers, so it's not fair to put out a number, an exact number. But with my quick calculations based on what is being talked about on the state level, we're still looking at a couple $1 million. Well, I shouldn't say a couple million, but millions of dollars under what we had requested. And certainly transportation plays a factor in if we do full versus remote, because we might not need as much transportation, but we're still talking about millions of dollars short than what we had requested for a level staffed school. We also become aware of ventilation issues in at least a couple of the buildings, but likely similar problems exist in other buildings that have not yet been tested, just simply because of the age. Under normal circumstances, the ventilation issues would need to be addressed, but as they were, there wasn't any immediacy, in my opinion. They do need to be addressed, but there wasn't immediacy. However, because of COVID-19 and an airborne virus, proper ventilation becomes essential in limiting the risk of contracting the virus. The cost savings of not reopening the buildings may allow us to bring back a few more educators to improve the student-to-teacher ratios and the reduced need for PPE and other related materials may allow us to use COVID-19 relief money to address some of the larger ventilation issues that are not funded by the city. It's my hope that we can re-examine and return to in-person learning for the second half of the school year. Do so at this time. To the families that are struggling to provide childcare and work, find work, return to work, I empathize and I'm sorry that such a burden is falling on you. I think that there are larger societal issues that are the cause of the stress that you're currently feeling, especially for those that must rely on schools as primary childcare. But I cannot in good conscience allow the reopening of schools to become a short-term fix to larger problems when it so obviously puts our children and the community at risk. And I just want to say to those parents again, it's not fair that you have to make these decisions, and I'm sorry.
All right, thank you, Peter. Brandon, then Sue.
Thank you. I as well want to echo some of the comments that Melissa had made. Going through this process, this being my first term on this committee, is probably one of the most difficult decisions that I'll have to make serving on this committee. But listening to the superintendent's plan, hearing from parents and teachers, I as well believe that the full remote model is our best choice to start off the 2020-2021 school year. The guidelines outlined by DESE of mask wearing, hand washing, sanitation, all that we do in our daily life, I just don't think are pragmatic in the school setting. I think if we have the ability to move forward in a way that's going to ensure that all of our teachers are safe, all of our students are safe, and we're able to provide them with a good learning experience, I think the full remote model is the way to do that. Working with the population I do, I totally understand the concerns for child care that families have, and like Peter said, I apologize that people are going to have to deal with this struggle. But I as well think that safety needs to be our number one concern when making this decision, and I truly feel that the full remote model provides us with that best option.
Thank you, Sue.
Okay, I came in tonight with the idea of supporting the hybrid model and listening to everybody's concerns. I still think I do support the hybrid model, but maybe a more limited hybrid model. I definitely feel that you have a population of students, special needs students, the technical ed students. I really think that they should be in school to learn what they need to. I'm very strong about that. However, I agree that it's unfair to put us in a situation where the state has not opened up all of their offices. Venues, indoor venues are not at 100% capacity, and yet we're asking schools to open the doors up for 100% occupancy of our students. That's just not acceptable. The students, as we've heard, should not be the victims or the test of COVID, whether it's going to be successful, if it's going to spread inside. So I could not support full opening at all. I'm still on the fence. I think the other issue for me is safety. We've all said safety. I think safety translates into many things. We still have a level funded budget, not a level service budget. There's a difference between those two things. Level service means the same services we had last year. Level funded means same dollars, but don't forget you've got contractual dollars built into that for salaries, so it's not the same as last year. Obviously,
insurance.
Excuse me? Obviously,
health insurance.
Yeah. And obviously, student, I lost my train of thought on that one. But I think, class sizes, what are the class sizes going to be looking like? At the high school model, what are the different course offerings? What's the size of those going to be? I mean, those are things to consider as well. So to me, safety means a lot more than just, the virus itself. It also means, and also the air quality has been mentioned as well. I mean, we all know the transmission of this virus through a Marriott hotel at a conference through their ventilation system. So that's another concern. We know the high school has had a plague of poor ventilation. It's been documented. So hear everything. So I think we need to be responsible, you know, and make the decision based on, you know, all the things that we've heard tonight.
Okay. So I believe everyone else has had a chance, so I'm going to express my views. As much.
Excuse me. I made the motion, but I didn't get a chance. So
I thought you had spoken, Dean. I'm sorry.
I'd like to speak.
When you talked about your motion, you went into detail.
Okay. There was a survey done and sent out because we wanted to hear back from parents and staff. That's what I thought the intention was. So they sent up, we asked people to take the time. Superintendent put the survey together. I know they worked very hard to get this out, get it out ASAP. They got it out, and 2,700 parents responded. Now remember, there are 6,000 students in our system. Some have more than one child. So if you're looking at a number of 2,700, that's a sizable sample of those who are responding. And there were 454 staff responses, which is, after the 30% reduction, is a pretty high number. 83%, now this isn't my survey, this is according to the superintendent's information. 83% of all parents preferred an in-person learning or hybrid model. 70% of staff preferred some type of in-person learning. I don't want that to be sort of missed in the conversation. Also, an increase to the school budget in the middle of COVID of $2.8 million. I wouldn't want to have that conversation with any taxpayer or any resident of the city to say that is barely enough for us to get it through the day or through the week or through the year. That would be an insult to them. When the school committee asked for the largest increase in their budget in the history of the city of Leominster, and then receives a minimum of 2.8% increase, it says that's barely enough for us to make it through, and calls it a bare bones budget. I think we do have a responsibility to the parents, and we have a responsibility to the hundreds of parents that I talked to and spoke to that said, what do I do if I can't send, if I have to go to my work, if I have to go to work, my significant other goes to work, or I'm a single parent, I have small children, I have nowhere else to send my children during the school day. What I think when people responding to this, 2,700 parents saying that 83% of them felt some in-person learning or a hybrid was necessary, part of that was because of that. And I think that we cannot leave this conversation without acknowledging the fact, when we're talking about risk and we're worried about kids, that there are going to be many, 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 many kids at home, latchkey kids, with nobody there to watch them over or
Point of order. Point of order. We're talking about the education. We're talking about going to the schools. You want to talk about child care? There is no child care in Leominster.
Okay.
You want to send the kids to school because there's no child care? No.
So why did we bother sending a survey?
You're going off on a tangent.
Why do we bother sending a survey out if we can get the response and not listen to them?
Excuse me. I'm going to do a point of order. Ron, this is Dean's chance to talk.
No, I'm set. I'm all set.
Wrap it up because I know you've been speaking for quite some time. Can you? You're making some valid points. Do you have anything else that you want to add?
Are you talking to me? No, I'm done. I just think we would be not doing our job if we didn't enter in this information, because the superintendent and her staff took the time, a lot of time, to send these surveys out. This is what they said. These are my customers. They know their kids better than anybody. This is what they're saying. I didn't want this opportunity to go by without acknowledging that I at least heard what you said. I read it, and I appreciate the superintendent and their staff sending this out. I think what the superintendent is saying to us tonight is the hybrid is what, based on all of the information that she has in her staff and all the meetings that she's attended and all the information that's come from the Department of Public Health, the Department of Education, they're saying this is the best. We have to pick one night, tonight. She did her due diligence. The public and the parents certainly spoke. The staff spoke, and now we just have to make a decision. So my motion stands.
Okay, thank you, Dean. So I'm the last person. I'm going to just say that I firmly believe the best way to educate children is to have that personal relationship, and B, have the teacher in front of the class to have that hands-on experience. I do believe that opening fully is not something that is realistic, given the guidelines that we would need to follow. We, would need a great deal more staff and construct, a great deal more classrooms in other common areas that aren't currently be used as classrooms. So unfortunately, I do not think that's a realistic plan at this time. I do not, at some point, I do think that we will probably end up going remotely if there is an uptick in COVID cases in our state or in our community. I think it's kind of, if that was going to certainly happen, it's going to happen probably more prevalently when there's flu season coming around, which is the winter. So I am feeling that the hybrid model offers the opportunity for kids to make that connection with their peers, with their teacher, to have some hands-on learning, but also practicing remote learning, so that if and when there is a time for us to go remotely, it will be a much more easy transition for kids because they've already been practicing it and doing it part-time. But they will have that foundation and that connection with their teacher, with their peers. There are certain students, regardless of what model we go through, who do need that in-person, certainly the special education students, certainly the CTEI students. There may be some English language learner students and other folks, pockets of populations that I'm not aware of, off the top of my head, that need that continuity and that consistency and that modeling and that social interaction with their peers and their teachers. I do think there's lots of safety issues no matter what we do, but I do know that there's unfortunately a large vulnerable population of children who are at home and who are not being visible in the community and don't have that trusted adult that they can talk to or go to, that they see and that they can get support from. So I do feel that at least by having children make that connection in person, being able to have that opportunity, that if they do need to reach out, they'll be more apt to do that because they've had that in-person, connection with a trusted adult and staff member from our school system. I do think that as a community, I don't know whether the mayor or other folks have had the opportunity to see whether places like the Boys and Girls Club or the Spanish American Center can step up and provide some support to families that may need it during those remote weeks for those children. I think, we certainly would be able to assist with helping sort of funnel that process if need be. So I think there might be other community supports to help parents, get creative during this time. But I do really think that it is important. I think most parents would love to see their children go off, to school for a variety of reasons. I think it helps children learn the best. And it gives them a foundation which to springboard off of. So for me personally, I think a hybrid model, is the best possible solution, knowing that at some point we may need to go remotely. I think it'll be easier to slide into a remote situation, and it will be more difficult to start remotely and then slide into an in-person position, because I'm thinking that, when we come to winter, we're going to probably struggle, with more concerns around health issues, which would impact, safety issues in the school system. So if we went remotely now, I wouldn't see us really going back in person until late spring, and by then the school year is almost over, and you've kind of lost, all those opportunities. So that's kind of my position. We do have a motion on the floor and a second, and I'm going to do a voice vote since not everybody is on camera. So when I call your name, please, if you're voting yay, you're voting for the hybrid model. If you're voting nay, you're not voting for the hybrid model. Okay? Peter?
Nay.
Ron?
Nay.
Sue?
Yay.
Melissa?
Yay.
Brandon?
Nay.
Isabel?
Nay.
Mike?
Nay.
Dean?
I'd like to be recorded as a yay supporting the superintendent's recommendation.
Okay, and Eileen, myself, I vote yay. So I believe the motion does not carry. 1, 2, 3, 4, it's 5-4.
Yes, it was a 5-4.
Yeah, so that motion did not carry. Would somebody else like to make another motion?
I would like to make a motion regarding the remote model that we discussed options for timeline and planning, and also, as Ron was saying, under what circumstances we would open or close again if we voted on, if we're voting on a fully remote plan now.
So, I mean, I think those are all things that we, no matter what plan we go to, that we would need to discuss. So I don't know if that necessarily needs a motion. I think we need to make a motion about what plan we're going for.
So then I would like to make a motion for a fully remote plan.
Do I have a second?
I will gladly second that motion.
Okay, second by Isabel. Again, I'm going to do a voice vote. Peter?
Yay.
Can I just say something here? Point of order. If you want to make a motion like that, you need to get it on the agenda so the public knows that this is before the school committee, that this is.
So Dean, the motion is that she's voting on the plan. That was what her motion was.
We voted on the plan.
And
we voted on the plan tonight. If you want to change it to say that we're going to fully go to that, whatever changes you make, then
we voted on one plan that was voted down. We still have the ability to vote on a plan because that's still a part of our
so
agenda.
is this the one that we're going to be sending to the state?
Yes.
Okay then. Yep.
May I say something?
Ron, we have a motion.
I know
so
that.
Is this discussion on this? It's not the time
Dean's
to
argument,
argue.
the only thing that's hindering Dean's argument or Dean's proposal that didn't make it was that there's no number. If there was a number that said how many kids have to get sick or how many parents, whoops, I lost everything. Can you hear me?
Yes. We can hear you, Ron. We can't see you, but we can hear you.
God.
But I don't think we can give that number until we have some guidance, from the state.
Dear.
Because we would be just making an arbitrary number, and I think, none of us are medical professionals and scientists, so that would have to, I would hope, get some direction.
Well, to Paula's point, all we have to do is find out from the Board of Health or the health professionals, what's the number? What's the drop dead number that we would have to stop the hybrid and go to remote? We haven't had that discussion. All we've done is.
Well, we've already taken a vote, Ron. Ron, we've already taken a vote. Melissa made I stand corrected. She was correct. She's making a motion to go with a full, and I think there was a second. So now I think if there's no conversation, we vote on the motion.
Right. So we are doing discussion.
Okay.
And unfortunately, Ron, we don't have those answers to vote on.
I know them. But whoever makes the vote, if you remember, according to Robert's rules, those that voted no can bring the thing back to get revoted.
Yes.
Remember that.
We still don't have that information, but we, certainly, and we can revisit, I think, whatever plan it's a fluid process. We don't know what's going to happen with the pandemic, and we will be back at the drawing board no matter what plan we choose. So right now I have a motion and a second, And does
I
anybody
mean-
else have any discussion?
Hold it. Isabel wants to say something.
I do. Quickly, I just want to add, it's my understanding that the superintendent was not, and please correct me if I'm wrong, superintendent, but you were not advocating for one model or the other. You just laid them out equitably for us to decide upon based off of the data you provided us. There is not one model that you are advocating for. Is that correct?
Says it right in the document.
For me, any type of in-person would be beneficial for students. And so even if we're in the remote plan, I'm already considering how could I bring children in? Because I do feel that children need some in-person learning.
Thank you.
And I was just going to throw in, I know somebody talked about what other school systems are doing. I believe Winchendon is going back fully to school, which is also a neighboring community.
Well, since the superintendent's here, why don't we ask? There's 3 plans. Which plans does she support?
I think she just said she wanted an in-person model.
So any in-person would be beneficial for our students.
All right, but there's 3. There's 3 that we have to pick, that the school committee has to pick from. Which one are you for? 1, 2, or 3?
A 1 and a 2. I'm not for 1. I think parents
can't. We have to submit 1 to the state.
Good. Right.
Which one would you prefer?
She's not for remote, is what she's telling you.
All right. We as a school committee have to send down 1, right?
Yeah.
And I'm asking for the recommendation of the superintendent. 1, 2, or 3? Which one? I just want to know that.
Right. So let's not call them 1, 2, or 3 because everybody has a different version of what they are. I think what I heard the superintendent saying, correct me if I'm wrong, is that she does not feel that remote learning, fully remote learning is her.
Madam Chair, under Robert's Rules of Parliamentary Procedure, if you want to engage in debate, then you must give up the seat and give it to the chairperson. All right, if you're going to do that. I don't want to debate. I'm asking a question. I'm asking a question right now. We have to submit.
She answered your question. What is the issue? She answered your question. Superintendent, do you want to just answer it one last time, and this will be the final time.
We're supposed to send something to the state. We get our recommendation from the superintendent. I want to know what the recommendation from the superintendent.
Superintendent, which of the 3 models, and if you cannot refer to them by number, but by name?
Yes, please.
If it was my choice at this moment, with the statistics I have in front of me, I would select a hybrid with a remote option. That is what I have been supporting since the beginning.
So we have a motion and a second, and at this time, it's going to be a voice vote. And I started with Peter, and I believe if you can just reaffirm what your decision is.
I'll be voting yay.
Okay, Ron?
Yay.
Sue? Nay. Melissa? Melissa, you're on mute.
If I made the motion, I would think I'm obligated to vote.
You can vote whatever you would like.
Nay.
Brandon?
Yay.
Isabel?
Yay.
Mike?
Yay.
Dean?
Nay.
And I will be a nay. So again, the motion passes 5-4. And so we have made a decision to go remotely. And at this point in time, the school department can make those plans. And we'll be asking for more direction about what that will actually look like for the students of Leominster.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Motion adjourned?
No, we have other things on the docket, Dean, so we will go through them, and then we will consider a motion to adjourn. Is there anything to talk about from the Finance Subcommittee?
Finance Subcommittee has not met, so there's nothing new there. May I ask a question about the plan we just voted, or is that out of order?
Why don't we do it under new business?
Okay.
Policy Subcommittee, Ron, is there anything?
No, we haven't had a meeting.
Yeah. All right, we have several action items. we have the vote to approve of the reopening plan, which we just did, but we do have a surplus equipment vote. Superintendent?
Yes, there are 32 very large older TVs. Many are broken. We've been trying to clear out classrooms. They're an obstruction in the way, and that we would like to have them voted in as surplus equipment.
Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to disperse of the surplus equipment.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mike. All those in favor, raise your hand to say aye. Aye. Any nays? Okay, motion carries. We have a vote to revise the school calendar. Superintendent, if you can just highlight what those changes are.
Sure. I'm hoping that this is the last one. We put 10 days of professional development. We must have 10 days of professional development before the first day of school. So teachers will come back on August 26th, have 10 days, and students will start on September 14th, with kindergarten starting on the 16th. The last day of school will be June 16th, with snow days built in, but we may not need those, for June 23rd. So I need a vote to accept the FY20 calendar.
Could I have a motion to accept the calendar?
I'll make the motion.
Ron made the motion. Who seconded it?
I'll second it. That's fine.
Brandon, thank you. All those in favor say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, that motion carries. We have new and old business enrollment update. Superintendent?
Yes, we're still enrolling. Students are still registering and coming in. We should be able to get you some numbers by the next meeting to see where we're sitting.
I think the vice chair needs to take over. Eileen left the meeting.
Oh.
I don't know why, but she left the meeting. So the vice chair needs to take over.
Okay. Okay. Are there any other new business?
I'd like to bring something up under new business.
School choice. School choice. Dean, you wanted to keep school choice on there? We do have to have a discussion about that at some time, at some point. Maybe not tonight, at the next meeting. We do have a lot of people still asking for school choice into our district.
If we're just gonna do remote,
Even remote.
All right. So if we're gonna just do remote, and it looks like the chair was talking about this going into flu season and maybe revisiting this later on, then why wouldn't we want to take on those? We're going to take on the funding is going to follow the student. Why wouldn't we want to take them on? In this case, it's a win for us, I would suspect, unless somebody else.
That's how I feel.
And I apologize, my whole computer crashed, but I am back on. I'm not sure why it just shut off.
Sorry. Sorry, Eileen, I just brought up school choice. We've kept it on the agenda, and now that we're going remote, we actually have people that would still like to be part of Leominster Public Schools, even if we are remote. They want to be on our enrollment. So I would like to either accept or negate their request at this point so that we can move forward with scheduling and preparing our classrooms and teacher rosters.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept school choice with the superintendent's recommendations. And,
I'll second it.
In light of the fact that we're doing remote learning.
I'd like to second that, if possible.
Okay, so now we have discussion, and I apologize if I missed discussion. Does anybody else have something to say? Because I do have a question. So my concern would be if we were to ever go back in person, and how that would impact our ability to do so.
So we've always had cutoff numbers. So we're still going to adhere to those once we hit to a class size. Right now, we've been using an average of 30. So we will wait to see once we call back some teachers in the next week or two, and we'll adjust numbers and see where we have room available. And I'll bring those numbers forward as they come available.
All right, thank you. Does anybody else have anything to add?
I think Mike had a question.
Mike, did you have a question? I don't see you anymore.
I had the same question. I just wanted to make sure, I'm in favor of adding school choice students remotely. I just want to make sure we don't add so many that we're in trouble then when we want to go back in person.
I agree.
Right.
I agree.
Yep. We'll watch our numbers.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Raise your
Aye.
hand. Aye. Any nays? Okay, the motion carries. We will be accepting school choice. So somebody had a question that they wanted to bring up under new and old business pertaining to our plan. I think it was you, Mike?
Yes, that was me. So under the hybrid model that we did not accept, there was a provision that families who wanted strictly remote could be accommodated. Now that we have voted for strictly remote, can we authorize the superintendent to identify students who need to be in the school and then bring that plan to us to have, I suspect we will have some teachers willing to be in the school and some students who have a good case to need to be in the school. Maybe those could line up. So we could entertain a proposal at our next meeting to allow some either hybrid or even maybe even full-time if it's only a few, if that's doable with the resources we have in addition.
Mike, I think that's a good point, but I think we need to check with the state because they were looking from us for what model we supported. So if we're going to create yet another model and they'll give us the flexibility, then I think we can get that on the agenda and have that.
Right. I do think there are some students that we are going to really struggle to accommodate remotely if we don't have in person. Some of our more, maybe our life skills class, our CTEI, folks. So we will have to take a look at that, I think. But our main plan will be, like we have voted on, is remote. Ron?
In terms of flexibility, like Mike was saying, and also Dean, what we've already voted on for the remote learning, if, and note the big word if there is no spike and it goes down, I know we all voted it would be for the first quarter, but if we see that during the quarter that remote learning can be tweaked to being almost hybrid, do we need a number? Do we just follow the state? What if the state says that, things are starting to look better?
The state set the guidelines. That's how we got to where we're at. So if they change the guidelines, I assume that'll come back to us for yet another vote. But I think they wanted to know from us by tomorrow or the first of the month where we are, and that we're sending that down to them. And if in fact there are other questions, then I think we need to submit those questions to DESE and have them answered.
My reading is we're required to send all three plans to the state tomorrow, right? Along with which one we've chosen to start with.
Correct.
The state guidelines, in fact, say we are supposed, the guidelines themselves say they're based on early June information. We have more information now, and say we should be willing to pivot to another plan as conditions warrant. So it seems clear to me what we voted on is how we're starting. And maybe there's an expectation that that will be for some amount of time. But I think if it becomes clear that it's safe to switch to a hybrid model, then that will be on our agenda and we can vote to switch to the hybrid model. And the state will have already approved that because we've sent all three plans to them.
Well, Mike, the only problem is we're down to two people testing positive, and we have one or two in Leominster Hospital and Health Alliance and 0 in intensive care. I don't know what that number is, and I would like to know from committee members when we decide, because we're making a decision for our school system, not the state. So I don't know how we do that, but yeah.
Right.
It's not going to get any better than this, Mike. Unfortunately, it's not going to get any better than this.
That's exactly how I felt last week, and then our state numbers started creeping up again, right? And we don't restrict people from traveling in and out of Leominster to the rest of the state.
No, but
so
Chelsea has 3,000. We've had 725. I can't control what goes on in Chelsea.
Believe me, I hear you. I just also know any change in policy, there's 3 weeks before we start seeing that in confirmed cases, and 3 more weeks before we start seeing that in hospitalization, and a couple more weeks. I mean, there's a huge lag between when we do something and if it has an effect when we see that effect.
I don't want to debate it. I just want to make sure we're mindful of that.
Right.
That's all.
Yep.
Right. I think, the ultimate thing is none of us have a crystal ball. This is a pandemic that none of us have faced before, and it's going to be a learning curve and fluid process for everyone. Whether you're a parent, whether you're a community member, whether you're a student or a teacher or faculty, it's something that has never occurred. It's unprecedented. And, we will make the best decisions based on the best information we have at the moment. And we need to be flexible so that when conditions change, we will also be ready and able to change. So at this time, could I have a motion to adjourn?
Hold it. Eileen?
Hold on. Newer old business?
Sorry.
Sue has something to say.
Oh, okay. I can't see Sue anymore. So go ahead, Sue.
Okay, so I just wanted to bring up the question that was discussed earlier about, daycare, Boys and Girls Club. I mean, Dean, locally, do you have any feel for what's happening with childcare, et cetera?
I think everybody was waiting for tonight. Everyone was waiting for tonight's vote, so.
So, okay, but you don't have any connections or any feel for that, or?
Well, I mean, if we're on one hand we say it's not safe for students to go back into our schools, and then we're going to say, well, now we're going to open daycare centers, and it's okay for students to go into a daycare center all day, but not to school.
Right.
I think that's going to be a pretty hard argument from people to say, well, wait a minute, you don't want your kids to go into public schools, but it's okay to send them to Boys Club, Girls Club, or Spanish American Center. Well, I think the vote was taken. I think now I can at least have that conversation with other agencies within the community. I know,
right.
Yeah.
But I also think, Dean, as you had pointed out before, there were a large majority of parents who did want their children to go to school in person. But that was not the will, of the committee.
Well, I hope they don't leave our school system, and I hope they don't opt to get off the school system and then end up doing homeschooling, because they now become off our rolls and we don't get the funding for them when the numbers are counted. So I hope that's not the case. But
sure. I mean, I don't think there would be any reason to do homeschooling, because we are doing the remote learning, and that would be what you would be doing with homeschooling, is learning from home. So we, have obviously the curriculum and the supports for students. The concern would be for them to go to another district who's going in person.
I don't. We just had a survey go out to the community, and we just had one go out. I don't know what people are thinking. I know I have conversations that are coming in right now as I speak from parents saying they're really upset. They'll just homeschool their kids if that's the case. So that's from them. So for you to generalize that people aren't going to leave the system, you're speaking for yourself and not anybody else. But I think to answer the question, Sue, so we don't get too far away from the conversation, is yes, I will begin, now that I know what the vote is, now I can begin to have conversations with parents. I can begin to have conversations with those other agencies in the community that might think about how they could help to fill the time that their children will be home alone.
All right. Anything else under new or old business?
I have something on the new business. For
Go
the
ahead.
next meeting, if Mike and the Finance Committee and the Superintendent could do a breakdown of any savings that we've had as a result of layoffs in the city. If you could give us a cost, because those funds should now be available if we've in fact saved those funds. If we cut $13 million worth of salaries, I would assume that's at least $1 million, if not more, of savings, which adds to the 2.75, which would probably bring it up to 3.75 that we'll have. So I would at least like a breakdown so we know the cost savings for since people begin to get laid off and up until such time as we have our next meeting, whenever that is.
I would also
we do
like
pay
to ask the
almost
superintendent.
half of salary as unemployment.
Whatever it is, yeah, from point A to B, and just what any savings was resulted.
I would also ask the superintendent to give us a better idea of what staffing would look like and what positions, can be called back at the various grade levels and that kind of thing.
Yes, we'll be making some moves in the next few days.
All right, is there anything else that anybody wants to add in new or old business? All right, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Melissa made a motion, and Who would like to second it?
I'll
Ron?
second it.
All right, thank you very much, everyone. Stay healthy. And our next meeting is, we'll send out because we're not having a meeting on Monday.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Be safe.
Thank you.
Be safe, people.
Bye.
Be safe.